Good day, viewers. Welcome to yet another interesting episode of Tuesday Talk. My name is Mishom Sandinyoze, and in today's episode, we still focus on Harare City Council and the Auditor General's report of 2023, mainly focusing on land sales, how land sales are robbing us, the residents at the end of the day. So, joining me today in the conversation is a director from Combined Harare Residents Association, Mr. Ruben Akili. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much for Open Council.
Thank you for being here. I hope we're going to have a very nice discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we want to look at the Auditor General's report of 2023, mainly focusing on land sales. So we know that Harare City Council has the responsibility of allocating people, of collecting revenue, but then at the end of the day, that revenue has to be accounted for. But that is something that did not happen. They didn't provide like financial receipts. What has been your observation of Harare City Council's conduct in land sale distribution?
Thank you so much. So when we speak around the issues of land governance in Harare, I think what is very very important is be able to then check at the background where all these things are coming from.
Yeah,
So when
definitely.
you look at the issue around land in Harare, let me just throw something in here to say that you realize that over the past years, the local authority has been, failing to then collect much needed revenue. And when you look at their collections, they are hovering around 60 to 70% collections. So one thing which we have observed from CRA as an association is that when such things have happened, the local authority has tended to lend as a source of income. So we really need to appreciate that. I think all of us we understand that even at some point in time, the local authority failed to then pay their employees, and right now they then gave them
Uh,
land as compensation of the monies which they would have failed to pay their employees.
so it's an indirect way of compensating them for what they've been failing to do.
Yeah, so it's like they don't have money. Let's say your organization or your employer does not have money to pay you salaries. So their salaries at some point in time were then financed through land sales. So
So
like as I said, like
yeah.
you actually see that because of failure to then what get revenue. So the local authority will then run to land because no chiripa does, or this is the immediate thing which they
The
can be
immediate
able then
solution, yeah.
to sell, because land it's on demand in Harare. So you actually see that it has become more of like a culture where they then fall back to land as a way of revenue generation. But at the end of the day, trying to then finance some of the issues such as salaries, for the local authority.
So, what do you then suggest should be done to address this problem? Because if we continuously continue to have like a reality where the city council does not have the capacity to give salaries to individuals working within the council, what then does the scenario look like in the future if we continuously have this? What do you suggest should be done to address this problem?
Yeah, as I said, like these issues, where are they stemming out from? We have always said from the CRA perspective to say the local authority in terms of revenue collection, what are the challenges? And you realize that it's more of like a vicious cycle where we are saying that they need to put up their proper billing system so that they can be able to
Something
then,
we have heard before.
yeah, something we have heard before, that they really need to put up a billing system that is functional, so that at the end of the day they can be able then to realize revenue.
Yeah,
Number
yeah,
one.
you then raised an important issue. I was also reading the Auditor General, and it highlighted that they don't have modern billing systems. The billing systems are either outdated or manual, and then we need to move into the technological era. These are some of the problems within the city council.
Yeah, yeah, sure. In ERP, they call it enterprise resource platform. We really need to digitalize,
Mm.
payments. And so some people, they pay their rates, they are not deducted, they lose confidence, and then at the end of the day, they boycott paying rates or they just stand off. So basically, when we look at the issue around land, as I said before, even also land, we need also to appreciate that land is also used to then give. I think this is in accordance with a circular from the Ministry of Local Government, so when you're elected to be a councillor, if you have become a councillor, you need to become one, because you will then get allocation of land, one residential,
How be a
one
lucky
commercial, and
individual
one
indeed.
and one industrial. So the
Yeah.
issue of land, that's why I'm saying that when you look at the land, it's something which has been at the center of kind of like not only rewarding failure to pay employees, but it has been a source of the local authority, maybe probably, yeah, to compensate those who have also probably who are working in the local authority, and also when they have failed to raise revenue, they've opted to sell land, and then at the end of the
To
day
sustain their
to
lives.
sustain the running of the local authority, or lives, as we might put. Yeah, but it's a serious challenge. And also, what we need to appreciate is that the local authority does not know the land which it has. This is something which is very, very important, which I think every Hararian and everyone needs to know.
Mm.
That so what you're talking about, the auditor general, it's something else. Even the ERP you're talking about, it has to then become a database where the local authority know how much land does it have. So at the moment, if you go to the local authority and say, how much land do you have commercial? How much land do you have industrial? How much land do you have residential?
They don't
Yeah.
know.
So actually, so you see the flows now.
Oh, so
So we are in a crisis. We are in a crisis.
also this is where the problem is emanating from. Like there's no clarity between the projected and the actual land that is there on the ground. Okay, we also look at like the residents at the end of the day, people who are paying taxes. Like you have to pay tax if you own land, right? And then it means that for the taxes that you are paying, you expect some sort of delivery to be returned to you at the end of the day, like water and all that. How is it impacting the lives of residents within Harare who are paying their taxes each and every month to city council, and then city council fails to account for that tax? What is that tax supposed to be used for?
Thank you so much. So this has become a trend.
Yeah.
As I said, when you look at the issue, it goes back to what I've said when we started this important conversation. To say, when you look at the collections or the revenue generated by the local authority, in terms of payment of taxes and whatever, and when they don't have monies coming through, it becomes very, very challenging. And and again, in terms of the revenue which is generated, usually you realize that what they've said to us is that there are some um, 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 you know a mandate which should not be, probably I would say, put aside, which is salaries.
Mhm.
So the first thing when you pay your rates, it's we need to pay salaries first, and then service provision becomes
Yeah,
something
yeah,
else,
yeah.
which also have also contributed to non-failure, or probably when residents start to then protest and say we cannot pay, because when you pay you don't see any difference. Whether you pay or not, you don't see any difference. We live in areas where probably refuse was last collected 4, 5, 6 months ago, and some they've gone for more than 30 years without municipal water supplies. And these
Yeah,
are some
very
of the, yeah,
detrimental.
so it's a plethora of issues here when we
Okay,
begin to talk about
Mr.
local authority.
Sorry to catch you there, Mr. Akili. Before we go further, let's just see this video of from one of the residents in Grenard Park, a concerned citizen indeed with something to say. Let's watch the video.
Address council kana ichi advertise land inoadvertise mumanewspaper and stuff, then yobva yatengesa land kuvanhu ndikana, but then kana yakuzocollecta matax nerevenue yeland iyoyoyo haisi kuzobudisa mabooks ayo, haisi tongoti hapana transparency panyaya dzematax, kuti ikutekisa vanhu havo, ikutekisa vanhu mari yakawanda sei. We need transparency ipapo, we need clear receipts, clear books, kuti tione kuti matax edu mari dzanyanya dzikufamba sei.
All right, as you saw in the video, so many citizens around Zimbabwe do not even know how city council is conducting its activity and how it's generating revenue, and also what is that revenue being used for. So back to you, Mr. Akili. I want to ask you this very important question. So when city council on its own does not really know how much land it has, what then happens to people living in marginalized communities? Does it then mean that the kind of revenue or the kind of taxes that are imposed on them are not realistic because they want to achieve some sort of financial obligation at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. When we look at people who live in the peripheries of the local authority, probably as we say marginalized communities, especially those, I heard you when you say granary.
Mhm.
So when you look at granary, these are some of the things again which we have always talked about when we talk of local governance. Granary, you actually see that when you go deeper, it's not within the city of Harare, and then it becomes under the jurisdiction of a rural district council, probably Zwimba Road.
Jimba,
Yeah.
yeah.
So again, when you talk about it, um, you have got an urban area,
Mm.
right,
Mm.
in a rural, a district council.
Yeah.
And then it becomes an issue where even I think the local authority have been saying that this is the issue around land governance, which we need to talk about. The local authority would then say, these are some of the areas which are then putting pressure on the services for the local authority, in particular the city of Harare. So I think the issue which we are talking about, it then requires, I would say, a proactive approach where we see the central government ensuring that there is much coordination in ensuring that if it is extending the boundaries for city of Harare to the other areas, or rather such councils also have that responsibility in ensuring that their people have services which they are supposed to get. But going back to your issue where you're saying people should know, indeed, Section 62 of the Constitution provide for that every person have a right to access to information for the purposes of accountability and also even for the
Transparency.
protection of a right.
Yeah.
So again, in this case, we've got environmental rights, we've got right to water, and among other rights. So again, you realize that over the years, there's been kind of like deliberate, I would say, stifling or starving residents information, because when we give you information, we then empower you. When we empower you, you ask real questions. So sometimes it's also deliberate that we don't give you information where sometimes when you need to know probably,
Information that is
yeah. So
sensitive.
so it's very, very important. So access to information becomes something which is very, very important for residents and even ratepayers, so that at the end of the day they can begin to ask those key questions, and also from an informed point of view.
So city council, before it sells land, it actually has to advertise it for the purposes of transparency and accountability, so that people know. But from your own observation, do you think people know that land is advertised before it is sold? And how effective has it been when city council says that it is advertising land?
So in Harare, when you look at the history,
Mm.
the local authority has not been kind of like at the center of developing land. I think we need to appreciate that.
Okay.
That's the first thing. So land has been given to cooperatives, right? So cooperatives then are then the ones who then advertise,
Mm.
and unless when you look at change of use of land, where the local authority would advertise in newspapers, but again, access to the press
Exactly.
for the other, when you're talking of marginalized areas, which you're talking about, and when it is advertised again, it's probably it's about 5 centimeters times 5 centimeters. It's deliberate, and when you look at those notices, look,
Depriving people of
yeah, yeah,
important information.
So that's what I'm talking about, to say, when it's advertised in the newspapers, it's the information, it's advertised in a small, I would say font, and residents or even ratepayers won't be able to see that. So let me go back to the issues we were asking. So cooperatives has been the center of developments in Harare. So the developer, who has been the cooperatives, and these cooperatives also have
Private
yeah,
developers.
yeah. So cooperatives, we have private developers. So when you
Mhm.
talk of private developers, you talk of your banks, you talk of your companies, which are, we have seen banks in Budiriro, we have seen banks in Kwazana where they've done development, isn't it? But again, cooperatives has been, I would say, the larger beneficiary of developing of residential land in Harare. And the way they've been run, they've been kind of like, some of them dubious, and double allocations, among other things. So there's chaos around land management and even land governance in Harare, because when the land has been surrendered to a housing cooperative, you actually see that at the end of the day, probably the people who were supposed to benefit in the first were no longer benefiting, or the land is sold maybe thrice, twice, or
I
and
wanted I actually
encroaching tax,
mm,
etc.
yeah, it's like you did a preemptive analysis of what I wanted to ask you.
Mm,
I wanted to say that so when city council now entrusted the responsibility of developing different communities, right, in the hands of
mm,
these private white developers,
mm,
they are expected to meet certain standards of
mm,
development, and when
mm,
they are
mm.
done, they then surrender those communities
Exactly.
back to Harare City Council.
Mm.
But what then happens if those private white developers fail to do so?
Nothing.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. Even the okay. So there is the municipal land in Harare,
Yes.
right? And there is state land.
Yes.
There's also state land where I think there are some areas near National Sports Stadium, where this is state land, and the Ministry of Local Government allocates that land, and then they develop, different cooperatives, and then
Yeah.
they surrender
Surrender
it
it back to
to
the
the local
citizens.
authority.
Yes.
That's one. And then the cooperative is the same. So the cooperatives, they should be given what they call a certificate of compliance,
Yeah.
to say that
Yeah.
they've complied to everything, probably sewer, roads, among others. But
Mm.
again, you actually see that, you will not do anything to anyone, because probably you are the chairperson, of the cooperative, probably after, ensuring that you have got the houses at whatever, and probably you pocket some money and you go to England, and it's done,
So the
nothing.
local authorities are not doing anything about it. Can we say that they share some sort of a mutual beneficial relationship with these private white developers?
uh, yeah, what is, it's not like as such, but I think it's a gap within the land governance itself. Whilst we appreciate that we might have probably rotten apples within the local authority itself, but again, you actually see that these are some of the gaps which needs to be addressed, to say, if a housing cooperatives fail to comply in
Yes.
terms of the Regional Town Planning Act, in terms of development, what needs to be done. But again, you realize that maybe probably some of these cooperatives, which is an issue which we need to talk about in these platforms,
Definitely.
cooperatives, most of them, they are then, in fact, housing has been used as a tool for political mobilization. And again, your technocrats at City of Harare cannot raise a voice, or
Yeah.
because they will suffer serious backlash from
Mhm.
the politicians. So again, it's a tricky situation, when we talk about the issues around land governance in our local authorities.
Efficiency, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, viewers, for tuning in to another interesting episode of Tuesday Talk. I was talking to the interesting director from from this nice organization, Combined Arrest Association. As you could see, we had a very informative discussion. We were talking about Harare, the city council's responsibility in land allocation, as well as revenue generation from those respective lands it is allocated to various individuals. Could it be commercial stands? Could it be industrial, or just residential stands? We're talking about issues of accountability, of transparency, and the impact that it has on the ordinary citizen. Talking about how that is so detrimental when Harare City Council does not effectively advertise land for people to know what is actually going on within the runnings of Harare City Council. Thank you for joining us in this very nice conversation. Tune in next week, same time, same place. Thank you.